The human envoy walked through the gates of the alien palace with slow steps. His boots echoed against the crystal floor, each sound sharp in the silence. He had crossed galaxies, survived battles, and carried the hopes of his people. Yet, as he entered the great hall, he felt his chest tighten. The space was enormous, lit by glowing walls that shimmered like liquid light. Strange banners hung from the ceiling, and alien guards lined the sides with weapons that gleamed in the air. He had expected cold diplomacy, but he did not expect her. The alien queen's daughter stood near the throne, wrapped in flowing ceremonial cloth. Her beauty was otherworldly, and her presence burned like fire against his senses. She was tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to glow faintly under the hall's strange light. Her eyes, wide and bright, carried both curiosity and pride. He tried not to stare, but his gaze returned to her again and again. The queen herself sat on her throne of stone and crystal. She was regal, powerful, and commanding, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. The hall was silent, waiting for the envoy to speak. His mouth opened, but before he could form a word, the moment happened. The daughter shifted her stance. A corner of her cloth slipped from her shoulder and slid down, falling to the floor in slow motion. The soft fabric touched the shining ground, and in that instant, everything stopped. The human froze. His breath caught in his chest. His throat went dry, and his body grew tense. His thoughts scattered, as if his mind had been struck by lightning. He had faced hunger, he had faced storms, and he had faced death itself. Yet this single moment shook him more than all those trials combined. The daughter bent gracefully to pick up the cloth. Her movements were slow, deliberate, almost like a dance. The hall's glowing walls reflected across her form, making her seem more than real, like a dream or vision sent to test him. His eyes locked on her, and he could not look away. His chest pounded like a drum, his body unsteady as if the floor had tilted under his feet. The guards noticed. They glanced at him but did not speak. They had seen men falter before. Yet this silence was heavier than any battlefield he had ever stood upon. The queen's eyes narrowed. She did not move, but her gaze pressed against him like a blade. She had seen his reaction. She measured him in that moment, judging what it meant. Was it weakness? Was it desire? Or was it something more dangerous? The envoy tried to steady himself. He forced his eyes away from the daughter, but the image burned in his mind. His body betrayed him. His heart raced with an intensity he could not hide. His hands trembled as he clenched them behind his back. The daughter rose, the cloth once again covering her form. Her expression did not show shame. Instead, there was something else. A spark of curiosity. A small smile, hidden but real, as if she had seen into his soul and found something she liked. The queen's voice cut through the silence. It was deep, commanding, and filled with authority. Human! You stand in the court of my people. Speak your purpose. Her words shook him out of his daze. He swallowed hard, forcing his voice to work. I come with a message of peace. I come with respect. The words sounded weak to his own ears. He had trained for months, preparing his speech with care. Yet all the practice had fallen apart in a single instant, shattered by the sight of her. The queen studied him, but she gave no answer. Her daughter, however, tilted her head ever so slightly. Her eyes locked onto his, as if she wanted to hear what else he might say, as if she wanted to test what was in his heart. The envoy felt sweat on his brow. His chest still burned. He forced himself to take a breath, then another. He remembered his people waiting, the mission he carried, the fragile treaty at stake. Yet another part of him, deeper and louder, remembered the way the cloth fell. It remembered the way his body froze, the way his heart raced, and the way her eyes lingered on him in that quiet moment. The hall was silent again. Every guard waited. Every servant stood still. The queen's daughter did not speak, but her presence filled the room with fire. The envoy realized then that this was no simple meeting. This was no ordinary moment. Something had begun. Something that would change him, change her, and perhaps change both their worlds forever. And it all started with the fall of a single cloth. The envoy could not sleep that night. The image haunted him. The hall, the glowing banners, the weight of the Queen's stare, and above all, the moment when the cloth slipped. He lay awake in his chamber, staring at the alien ceiling made of crystal veins that pulsed faintly with blue light. He told himself to focus on his mission, to remember his duty to his people. Yet his mind betrayed him. Again and again he saw her bending, her eyes meeting his with that hidden spark. He pressed his palms to his face and let out a sharp breath. Why had he stared? Why had his body betrayed him in such a public place? He had faced danger with calm, but now he felt like a boy again, unsteady and unsure. At dawn, he was summoned back to the palace hall. The Queen wanted to hear more of his message. He walked carefully, reminding himself of every lesson drilled into him: speak with respect, show no weakness, and never, ever let desire show in the court of another race. Yet his heart still carried the weight of the night before. When he entered the hall, he saw her again. The Queen's daughter stood beside the throne, tall and radiant, dressed in new ceremonial robes. The cloth shimmered like silver, flowing around her like living water. Her beauty struck him like a blade, sharp and sudden. His chest tightened once more. He tried to look away, but then it happened again. Her eyes found his. The glance was not an accident. She held it. Her gaze lingered, steady, and filled with quiet fire. It was a challenge, or perhaps an invitation. His heart pounded. He had been warned of alien customs, but nothing had prepared him for this. To her people, every movement carried meaning. A glance could bind lives together. A glance could start a war. The Queen spoke, her voice calm but sharp. Human, you ask for peace. But do you understand what peace requires? He bowed his head, forcing his voice to remain steady. I understand sacrifice. I understand honor. Yet as he spoke, his eyes betrayed him. They slipped once more to the daughter. He saw her lips curve, only slightly, into the faintest smile. A smile meant for him alone. The guards shifted uneasily. They noticed. Everyone noticed. The silence in the hall thickened like smoke. He felt sweat at the back of his neck. The Queen's eyes narrowed, her gaze piercing into his soul. Your heart is loud, envoy. Be careful. Desire has cost men more than their lives within these walls. Her warning rang heavy in his ears. He bowed again, trying to hide the storm inside him. He told himself not to look again, but his mind betrayed him once more. The memory of that smile was carved into him now. It was forbidden, yet it burned with a light he could not put out. After the court was dismissed, servants guided him through marble corridors back to his chamber. They whispered softly among themselves, words he could not understand. But he caught fragments. They spoke of the Queen's daughter. They spoke of suitors who had failed. They spoke of men who had vanished. He stopped one servant, his voice low. What happens to those who look upon her? The servant froze, then bowed deeply, refusing to meet his eyes. My lord, it is not my place to speak. But know this. A glance is never simple in this palace. It binds. It burns. It cannot be undone. The envoy's blood ran cold. That night, he sat alone at the edge of his bed, staring at his trembling hands. He told himself he had made a mistake, that he must not think of her again. Yet when he closed his eyes, he saw her gaze. He saw her smile. And deep inside, he felt something stronger than fear. He felt longing. As the moonlight from the alien sky spilled into his chamber, he whispered to himself. Why her? Why now? The silence gave him no answer. But his heart already knew. The glance had bound him. And from that moment forward, there would be no turning back. The palace never slept. Even at night, the walls glowed with soft light that pulsed like a living heartbeat. The human envoy lay on his bed, but rest would not come. The memory of her eyes, the spark in her smile, returned again and again. He tried to bury the thought beneath duty, but desire pushed through like a seed-breaking stone. At last, he rose and walked the halls. The air smelled faintly of incense and strange flowers. Shadows moved across crystal walls, shaped by the flicker of alien torches. His boots made no sound. The palace was alive, yet silent, as though waiting. Servants passed him in the corridors, heads bowed. Some stared at him with hidden curiosity. Others whispered when they thought he could not hear. He caught fragments of their voices. They spoke of the queen's daughter, and they spoke of him. He looked too long. The queen saw it. Maybe he is the one. The words followed him like ghosts. In a corner of the palace, two young attendants spoke in hushed tones. Their voices echoed softly through the stone. The envoy slowed his steps, listening from the shadows. They say she smiled at him. No man survives her smile. But maybe this one is different. The envoy's heart raced. His presence was no longer hidden. Every glance, every whisper, every small gesture had been seen. The court had watched. The servants had watched. And most of all, she had watched. Later, in the quiet of his chamber, a thought struck him with sudden force. What if she sought him too? What if her glance had not been accident or test but choice? He sat on the edge of the bed, his hands trembling as he pressed them together. The weight of it both terrified and thrilled him. The night stretched on. He tried to pray, to focus, but his mind carried him back to her again and again. He remembered the way she bent to gather the cloth. The way her eyes held his without fear. The way her lips curved, subtle yet daring. It was madness, he told himself. It was a trap, a test, or perhaps a curse. Yet deep inside, he longed for it. The thought of her set fire in his chest. The next day, he was escorted to the royal library. He was told he could read their history, their laws, their art. But as he walked among the towering shelves of glowing tablets, he could not focus on the words. Instead, he thought of her. A voice broke the silence. "You do not belong here." He turned. An elder stood among the shelves, robed in deep green, eyes heavy with wisdom. The man studied him with slow, careful disdain. "You carry peace," the elder continued, "but your heart is loud. The queen's daughter is not for you. Men who dream of her do not wake from their dreams." The envoy tried to steady his breath. "I did not seek this. I only came to speak of peace." The elder shook his head. "Peace is not made with words alone. Here, it is made with bonds. You have already crossed a line." The envoy felt the warning sink into him like a blade. Yet behind the fear, his heart whispered something else. A pull stronger than logic. A longing deeper than duty. That evening, as the suns dipped low beyond the palace windows, a servant approached quietly. She bowed and spoke with trembling lips. "My lord, the princess wishes to see you." "Alone?" The envoy's chest tightened. His throat felt dry. He nodded slowly, though his body trembled. The servant guided him through narrow halls, far from the throne room. The air grew cooler, the lights dimmer. At last, they reached a small chamber draped in soft cloth and lit by silver lamps. And there she was. The queen's daughter stood waiting, her robe of white silk falling gently around her form. Her eyes met his instantly. This time there was no court, no throne, no guards. Only her, radiant and alive before him. She stepped closer, her voice a whisper. "You looked at me. Why?" The envoy could not answer at first. His tongue felt heavy, his chest full of fire. He wanted to speak of duty, of accident, of weakness. But none of it would be true. "I could not stop myself," he finally said, voice trembling. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "No man ever does." She reached out and touched the edge of his sleeve. The touch was light, like a spark, but it set his blood on fire. His breath caught, his heart thundered, and he knew then that he was trapped. Not by duty, not by law, but by desire. The princess stepped back, her eyes sharp yet soft. "Be careful, human! Desire whispers loud in this palace, and whispers never stay secret for long." The envoy stood frozen in the quiet chamber. The princess's touch still lingered on his sleeve, a spark that burned through his blood. Her warning echoed in his ears. Desire whispers loud in this palace? Yet he knew the truth. His heart no longer whispered. It roared. The princess studied him carefully. Her gaze did not waver. She stepped closer until the space between them vanished. He could see the soft glow of her skin, the faint rise and fall of her breath. Her voice came low, almost trembling. You looked at me when the cloth fell. Why did you not bow your head? Why did you not turn away like the others? The envoy swallowed hard. His throat was dry, his chest heavy. Because I could not. Something in me refused to look away. Her lips curved, not into a smile of mockery, but into something softer, more dangerous. Then you are either brave or foolish. She circled him slowly, her eyes sharp, measuring him as if he were prey. Yet there was no cruelty in her steps. Only testing, only curiosity. In our law, she said, her voice smooth, to see me in such a way is no small thing. It is a bond. A promise. And promises here are heavy, human. They do not break. The envoy turned toward her, his chest rising and falling with unease. I never meant to dishonor you. She stopped in front of him, eyes blazing. You did not dishonor me. You challenged me. No man dares to meet my gaze. No man dares to see me as more than the queen's daughter. But you did. And now I must know if you are worthy. Her words struck him like thunder. He felt the weight of them pressing into his bones. His people had sent him to speak of peace, yet here he stood, tangled in something far deeper than politics. What does it mean to be worthy? He asked. The princess leaned closer. Her breath brushed against his cheek. It means you must prove that you can see me, not as prize, not as curse, but as woman. His heart pounded. He wanted to answer, to tell her he had already seen her as more than a symbol. But the words caught in his throat. She turned from him and walked toward a small table draped in white cloth. Upon it rested a ceremonial blade, its edge carved from crystal, glowing faintly with blue fire. She lifted it with graceful hands and returned to him. Take this, she said, holding the blade out to him. He stared at it, confusion in his eyes. Why? Because I will test you, she whispered. Not with strength. Not with skill. But with truth. He hesitated, then reached out. His hand closed around the hilt, cold and smooth. The weight surprised him. It felt alive, humming faintly, as though it carried the will of the palace itself. The princess stepped back, her eyes never leaving his. If your heart is false, the blade will cut you. If your heart is true, it will remain still. The envoy's breath shook. He raised the blade, waiting for pain. His chest ached with fear. Yet nothing came. The glow dimmed. The weapon lay quiet in his grip, as if it had accepted him. The princess's eyes widened, her lips parting in silent surprise. She took a step closer, her voice soft. It accepts you. The envoy lowered the blade, relief flooding through him. What does it mean? It means you are not false, she whispered. It means the bond is real. Her hand reached for his, resting gently over the blade. The warmth of her touch filled him with fire. She looked into his eyes, and this time there was no test, no warning, only truth. You have begun something that cannot be undone, she said. Do you understand? He nodded slowly. His voice shook, but it was steady enough. Yes. I understand. For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then, with a slow breath, she pulled her hand back and turned toward the door. Leave now, she said. The queen must not know we have spoken like this. Not yet. The envoy stood frozen, torn between fear and longing. He wanted to remain, to speak, to reach for her again. But he forced himself to bow and step back. When the door closed behind him, his body trembled. The blade's glow still burned in his memory, and the fire of her touch still warmed his hand. He knew then that this was no accident, no passing moment. The princess had tested him. And she had not turned him away. Something greater than peace had begun. The next morning, The envoy was summoned again to the throne hall. He walked with heavy steps, his thoughts still burning from the night before. The princess's eyes, her hand on his, and the blade that had accepted him. None of it would leave his mind. Yet now he had to face her mother. The queen sat tall on her throne, wrapped in robes of deep crimson that shimmered like fire. Her crown glowed faintly, carved from the crystal of their world. Her gaze was sharp, colder than steel, and when it fell upon him, he felt as though his very soul was being weighed. "Human envoy," she began, her voice echoing across the chamber. "You carry peace on your lips. Yet I sense storms inside your chest. Do you think you can hide your heart from me?" The envoy bowed deeply, trying to keep his voice steady. "I came only to serve the treaty between our people. My loyalty remains with peace." The queen leaned forward. Her eyes narrowed. "Peace is built on truth. Lies destroy it. Tell me then, why does my daughter speak of you?" The envoy's blood ran cold. He forced himself not to move, but his chest tightened with dread. "Your Majesty, I mean no disrespect. I have only offered her the respect I give to any royal blood." The queen's lips curved into a thin smile. "Respect is not what I saw in your eyes. Do not mistake my silence for blindness. You looked at her when no man dared. You stared when others bowed their heads. That is not respect. That is desire." Her words cut him deep. He tried to answer, but no words came. His throat felt locked. The queen rose from her throne. Her presence filled the hall like thunder. She stepped closer, each movement heavy with power. The guards shifted but did not speak. The entire court held its breath. "You must understand," she said, her voice low but fierce. "My daughter is no simple woman. She is heir to my throne, bound by ancient law. Men who desire her do not walk away unchanged. Many tried. None endured. Their hearts broke, their bodies failed, or their lives ended. Do you wish to share their fate?" The envoy's hands trembled. He wanted to deny it, to swear that he carried no such desire. But deep inside, the truth screamed too loud. He could not deny what his heart already knew. The queen's eyes narrowed further. "You hesitate. That tells me more than words ever could. You feel it. You cannot deny it. And if you cannot control it, then you must be prepared to bear the weight of it." The envoy lifted his head, meeting her gaze. His voice was low, but steady. "What weight, Your Majesty?" The queen's voice deepened. "The weight of a bond that binds not only lives but worlds. If you claim her, you claim us. If you falter, you doom both your people and mine. Think carefully, human. For one glance may have already written your destiny." The envoy felt sweat drip down his spine. His chest rose and fell with ragged breath. Yet even as fear filled him, another image returned, the princess's smile, soft and real, the warmth of her hand against his. It gave him strength where none should exist. "I do not seek to harm your people," he said finally. "But I cannot pretend I did not feel what I felt." The queen studied him in silence. Her eyes burned like flames, searching his soul for weakness. Then, at last, she spoke again. "You are bold. Perhaps too bold. But boldness does not make a man ready. My daughter may test you. She may draw you closer. If you give in and fail, your death will not be quick. And the peace you came to build will turn to ash." She returned to her throne and sat tall once more. Her voice rang across the hall with finality. "This is your warning. The path before you is dangerous. You may turn away now, while you still can. But if you continue, there is no escape." The envoy bowed low, hiding the storm in his heart. "I understand, Your Majesty." Yet as he rose and left the chamber, his mind was not filled with the queen's warning. It was filled with the princess's eyes, her voice, and the fire that pulled him toward her no matter the cost. In his heart he knew the truth. He could never turn away. Night fell over the alien palace. The twin moons cast silver light across the crystal towers, and the air carried the faint hum of energy flowing through the walls. The envoy sat alone in his chamber, his thoughts tangled in fire and fear. The queen's warning had burned into his bones. She had told him to turn away while he still could. Yet his heart would not let him. He rose and stood by the window. The alien sky stretched wide, filled with stars brighter than any he had seen on Earth. His chest ached as he whispered to himself. Why her? Why must it be her? A soft sound broke the silence. The door creaked open, and his breath caught in his throat. She stepped inside. The princess. She wore no crown, no jewels, no robe of ceremony. Only a simple gown of pale cloth that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. Her hair flowed loose around her shoulders, and her eyes glowed softly as they fixed on him. For the first time, she looked less like a symbol and more like a woman. Why are you here? He asked, his voice low, almost trembling. She closed the door behind her and walked slowly toward him. Because I must speak with you. Not as daughter of the queen. Not as heir to the throne. But as myself. He could not move. His chest pounded as she stopped only a few steps away. The air between them was alive, heavy with unspoken fire. I need you to understand, she whispered. Every man who has looked at me has seen only a crown. They saw a throne, a prize, or a curse. None of them saw me. None of them wanted me for who I am. That is why they failed. Her voice shook slightly, though her eyes held firm. She drew a slow breath, steadying herself. But you. When the cloth fell, you did not look away. You froze, but you did not turn your eyes. You saw me. Not as a title. Not as a prize. You saw me. The envoy felt the words strike his heart like lightning. His throat tightened, and he forced his voice to rise. I do not know why I could not look away. But I know it was not just desire. It was more. It was as if fate itself reached inside me and refused to let go. Her lips parted, and for the first time, her proud expression softened into something fragile. Something vulnerable. She stepped closer, until her hand brushed his chest. You speak of fate, she whispered. But do you know what it means for me? I live as a prisoner of my blood. My mother watches every breath I take. Every glance I give is judged. Every smile is weighed. I cannot be free. I cannot choose. Unless... Her voice broke, and she lowered her eyes. Unless someone dares to claim me not for power, but for me. The envoy lifted his hand slowly, as if afraid she would vanish. His fingers touched her chin gently, raising her face so her eyes met his again. I am only a man. I came here with no thought of thrones. But if I saw you, truly saw you, then it was because you are more than what they call you. You are fire. You are storm. And I cannot walk away. Her breath shook as tears filled her eyes, but she did not look away. Instead, she leaned closer, resting her forehead against his chest. The weight of her trust pressed deep into his heart. For so long I have been alone, she whispered. No one ever touched me without fear. No one ever spoke to me without mask. You are the first. And I am afraid. Afraid that if I reach for you, everything will break. Yet I cannot stop myself. The envoy wrapped his arms around her gently. His chest ached as he whispered into her hair. I am afraid too. But I would rather face the fire than live without this moment. She lifted her head, her eyes shining with both fear and hope. For a heartbeat, silence filled the chamber. Then, slowly, her lips touched his. The kiss was soft, trembling, yet filled with truth. When they parted, her voice came like a vow. You have bound me now. No law, no throne, no queen can break what has begun between us. The envoy's breast shook as he held her close. He knew the queen would discover this. He knew danger waited beyond the door. Yet none of it mattered in that moment. For the first time, the princess had given him her heart. And he knew he could never let it go. The next day, the throne hall was filled with voices. Servants hurried across the floor. Guards lined the crystal walls, their weapons glowing faintly. Nobles whispered among themselves, their eyes darting toward the queen. A trial was about to begin, though no one dared call it by that name. The envoy walked through the wide gates, his heart heavy, his steps steady. He knew the queen had discovered everything. His secret meetings with the princess, her confession, their bond. He had expected this moment, but now that it had come, the weight was almost unbearable. The queen sat tall upon her throne, her crimson robes flowing around her like fire. Her eyes were sharper than blades, her voice strong as thunder. "Human envoy," she declared, "you came to this world for peace. But instead of peace, you have touched what is forbidden. You dared to look upon my daughter as if she were yours. You dared to bind her heart. Do you deny this?" The envoy bowed his head. His chest burned, but his voice was clear. "I cannot deny it, Your Majesty. I looked at her. I felt her. I chose her." A wave of whispers filled the hall. Some nobles gasped in shock. Others muttered words of anger. The guards gripped their weapons tightly. Yet through it all, the princess stood beside the throne, her head high, her eyes fierce with fire. The queen turned to her daughter. "And you, child? Do you admit this bond?" The princess stepped forward, her voice steady though her hands trembled at her sides. "I do. He saw me when no other man dared. He touched my heart when all others feared. I will not deny him. I will not let him be cast aside." The hall erupted with shouts. Some demanded punishment. Some demanded exile. But the queen silenced them with a single raised hand. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at the envoy again. "You know what this means," she said. "If you claim her, you will not leave this world. You will not return to your people. You will be bound to her, bound to us, for all your days. You will face trials beyond your strength. You may lose your life. And if you fail her, if you bring shame or weakness, both our worlds will bleed. Do you still choose her?" The envoy felt the weight of every word pressed down on him. His people needed him. His mission was not complete. But when he looked at the princess, when he saw the fire in her eyes, the hope trembling in her voice, he knew his answer had already been written. He took a slow breath and stepped forward. "Yes. I choose her." The hall fell silent. The queen's eyes widened slightly, though her face quickly hardened again. "You choose death, perhaps?" The envoy's voice rose stronger. "No. I choose life. I choose her. Whatever storms come, whatever trials await, I will not turn away. I would rather fall beside her than live without her." The princess's eyes filled with tears. She reached for his hand, bold and unafraid before the court. Her fingers laced with his, and the hall gasped in shock. The bond was sealed, not by law, but by choice. The queen rose from her throne. Her presence loomed over them like a mountain, yet there was no anger in her eyes now. Only deep, unreadable fire. She studied them both for a long, silent moment. At last, her voice came low and heavy. "Then so be it. You have chosen your path, and she has chosen you. I will not protect you. The court will not protect you. You will stand or you will fall by the strength of your bond. If you endure, then perhaps peace will endure with you. But if you break, both your people and mine will pay the price." The envoy bowed deeply, his hands still clutching the princess's. "We will endure." The queen's eyes softened, only slightly, as she returned to her throne. "Time will tell. Leave now. Begin what you have chosen. But remember, the eyes of two worlds are upon you." The envoy turned with the princess by his side. As they walked through the grand hall, the whispers rose again, filled with doubt, fear, and anger. Yet none of it mattered. His hand held hers, her fire filled his heart, and his choice was clear. Beyond the palace doors, the alien sky opened wide, filled with endless stars. For the first time since he had arrived, the envoy did not feel like a visitor. He felt like part of something greater, something unshakable. He looked at the princess, her lips curved in a small, trembling smile. And he whispered so only she could hear. "Whatever comes, we face it together." She squeezed his hand, her voice firm. "Together." And in that moment, with the eyes of two worlds burning behind them, and the unknown future rising ahead, their story truly began.